Okay, so let's have a look at how the set design contributed to the idea of this play as a comedy. Well, first of all, the comedy, I had the whole set painted a kind of light salmon pink colour. And the reason for that is because I wanted this place to seem a little bit cartoon-like. And that colour, it's first of all, it's light-hearted. It's a light-hearted colour. It's a sort of pleasant sort of colour. And in addition to that, the actors against it looked very bright and they stood out very nicely. And it was very brightly lit because I have a theory that to make comedy work, often if it's very brightly lit, that helps. So we've got this bright pastel pink, salmon pink background, and it's a very large set. So it's 11 feet high, and we've got what is it? 3 doorways and a window. And the doors, if you notice, well, I'm sure you will have noticed, the door and the window, they were at a 70-degree angle. And so it looked crooked. So when you looked at the set, even before the actors had come on it, before the start of the play, it was a little bit odd. It was a little bit unusual, and I wanted to highlight a sort of sense of the quirky, a sense of the unusual, a sense of maybe something that was a bit out of the ordinary, a bit odd, because I think comedy can be a little bit sort of out of the ordinary, a little bit quirky, or maybe even sometimes a little bit odd. So the whole colour scheme sort of helped. Now, on top of that, we hung some portraits, some pictures. And the pictures also were hung at that 70-degree angle, and the curtains on the window were hung at that 70-degree angle as well. The whole idea that it's slightly askew, slightly off-centre. And I think that what that does, what message the set sends is, it's how off-centre Monsieur Jourdain is. So it shows that he is also off-centre. He's off-centre because he's been changed by money, hasn't he? So that was one thing that I tried to do in terms of the set to indicate that issue. Now, there was only one difference to that. We only had one proper set change, where we had four people who were supposed to be talking outside, and then we brought on handheld flats which were 6 foot high, which were pink, and they were brought on by backstage crew and then taken off by backstage crew for a very short scene. So that's the set. Also, one of the things about the set was it was a large set and it left a large space. It was dressed with a piano because the piano was used. Sometimes it was dressed with a table, a big and enormous great display of fruit, and another table with food on it. That was just for the various different scenes. But the piano is a grand piano, and grand means, of course, large, and it also means something special. And the idea of that is to indicate that this was a luxurious and wealthy household. So the idea is to show a sense of luxury. The height of the set does that as well. For example, if you're in a home where the ceilings are 11 feet high, it's certainly more luxurious than if it's in a home where the ceilings are 6.5 feet high or lower. And in some places in this country they are lower, which poses a problem for people who are very tall. So the higher the ceilings are, the more luxurious a place feels. So we made it seem very large, so a very big set, and that gives a sense of it being large, expansive, and expensive also. In addition to that, we had a very nice gold chairs for around the dining table, and we had also what is called a banquette. So it's a sort of a long seating thing to sit on with plush red velvet top and carved gold legs on that as well. So that just shows again that there was a hint of luxury about the set itself. If we come to the costumes, what we've got with the costumes is that all the male characters have long cuffs dangling down to here. And they're very extravagant, and they go with this whole kind of idea of camp, over the top, flamboyant, and flourish, a sort of flourish to the performance. And what it does as well is, if you move arms around with these long cuffs on, the movements are all very clear. They're made more obvious, and they're more exaggerated as a result of that. And then we had 17th century costumes for the men and for the women. And for the men, that means 3/4 length trousers, so the trousers finish just underneath the knee, and I'm not sure what you would call those. I'll have to look that up for you. So you've got those, so hose probably, Hose. It's probably called hose. And then stockings, so they'd have white stockings, all of the men. And then they would have a long waistcoat, so the waistcoat comes down a long way, and then a very, very long jacket. And if you look at them, they all look, the whole idea is supposed to give the impression of exceptional wealth. Because don't forget, we are talking about people, all the people in this play, apart from the maid, really, are wealthy people, wealthy individuals, people with independent incomes who don't work for a living, who have lots and lots of money. Their clothes are made for them, they don't go to shops to buy them. And the women had long silk dresses, beautiful long silk dresses. Now, this was all topped off, finished off with 17th century wigs. So we've got big wigs, wigs that are very boofed up and very high, and then they're long and they come down, and the men, they come down to sort of at the just lower chest area. To the for the women, they're kind of either piled very, very high, or they come down very low as well. And the idea of that, again, it's to show extravagance and extremity. It's to show that their hair is extravagant, their spending is extravagant, their clothing is extravagant. It's all over the top. But actually, wealthy people in those days did tend to wear those things. We didn't just make it up. That is the style of clothing and hairdo that was popular at the time. It was extravagant, it was over the top, it was large, and in fact, it probably, in the case of most men, was not their natural hair. It was probably a wig made to look like that, a wig of human hair. So we've got a lot of extravagant display, and this is the thing. In the past, both men and women dressed for display if they were wealthy people. So they'd have the finest materials, silks and brocades and beautiful designs, very, very nice looking things. And the makeup, how did the makeup help? Well, again, I tried to make the makeup appropriate for the period. So to start with, they had a pale base white on their face, and that was very much a fashion in the 16th and 17th centuries. Very much a fashion. To be a beautiful woman, it was considered that you should be as pale as possible. But in addition to that, and this is something that is not so as common today, although more men wear makeup now than ever used to, men would also wear makeup as well as women, and they wouldn't think anything of that. That wasn't considered to be effeminate or feminine at all. Women wore makeup, men wore makeup, particularly in circumstances where they would be out in formal places. So with the men as well. So they'd have a foundation of clown white is the makeup I use, but it's applied quite thinly, so it doesn't look like a mask. Then around the jawline, very pale, some red that was sort of blended in, just so that there wasn't a white line between the face and under the chin. And that was just also to give it a little bit of warmth. Then a little bit under the nose to give it a little bit of warmth under the nose, and then some grease paint, red grease paint on the cheekbones that was blended in to give some warmth to the face. With the men, they would have a line of black underneath the eye, and with the women, I put some water-based glue underneath the eyes, and then we would drop glitter on them, so they would have very glittering eyes. Again, it's in order to create this idea and this impression of glitter and luxury and extravagance in the women, and it made their eyes stand out, and the black line underneath the eyes of the men made their eyes stand out as well. So the combination of set, this strong bright lighting to make it to help create an atmosphere, a bright atmosphere, a bright light atmosphere, which enables comedy to happen very nicely, and then the makeup. Also, I forgot, on the lips for the women they had a little love heart, so a little circle here, and a little thing here, so they've got a little love heart lips. And the men, just a little bit of lipstick on there, You can just about see there's a bit of colour there, but not to make them look, you know, like a drag queen or something like that. So it's more subtle than a drag queen, but it's obvious that it's supposed to be obvious that it's there. So we create these larger-than-life, extravagant, flamboyant, over-the-top characters. And again, it shows a message here as well. It's about money, isn't it? That display. If you've got fantastically luxurious clothing, you've got makeup. You've got lovely makeup, and you've got a huge, great wig, and you know, everything is extravagant. And the one last thing that finished off the makeup was a beauty spot. Everyone on set had a beauty spot somewhere on their face. Now, I'm not quite sure when that fashion started or why. I've got a theory. I'm sure I've read somewhere that beauty spots were sometimes worn to cover up pimples or skin disfigurements. And then they became a popular fashion. I'm not sure if that's the case or not, but it just became a fashion to have a beauty spot. In the same way that sometimes now, when people have little cuts in their eyebrows, you know, where the eyebrow is cut away slightly in a sharp line, that is a fashion at the moment. Or if you have tracks in your hair, that's a fashion at the moment. Well, I think the beauty spot, men wearing makeup, the big wigs, well, they were fashion elements from the past, and so the 17th and 18th centuries. So it's a time where, if you have money, you can be big and flamboyant and over the top. And here we have Monsieur Jourdan, whose whole aim in life is to try to show that he is a man of quality, a man of money and background and breeding, and well, all of that helps to show that and create that atmosphere. All the female characters in the main roles have these very glamorous costumes, again to make them look wealthy and from this particular background. So it tells you the period, and it tells you the background and status of the people. They're high status people. And one of the ways that helps with the message is we see that Jourdan is made to look foolish. And one of the things that is always good in comedy is where people of high status are brought low.